Please note, we would like to make it very clear, we are totally against the form of discipline described in the articles and accounts being used on minors and non-consenting adults. Although some of these accounts are fictional, and others may be an exaggerated reality, none of them are too far from the truth of what really happened back in those days.
Another dose a few days later. Did anyone experience this? When you got beaten with a cane then had to endure the same punishment a few days later along the same lines. I have heard this is excruciating as the skin hasn't healed anywhere near properly. Surely possibly more painful than just the original initial beating. Also, was anyone told if they stood up or moved or even made a howl during punishment they would have to endure the same amount of strokes again? Or was this rare? I was caned, 3 strokes, and had to endure a slippering after school on the same day. And yes, it really did hurt. The first caning was from the headmaster, and as far as I can remember it was for horseplay in class. I was using a pair of compasses to try and stab my friend's hands. The idea was that he spread his hand out and I attempted to miss his fingers. I think I missed, he let out a scream and we were both sent to the head with the inevitable result. The slippering was for talking and larking about in assembly. A prefect sent us to report to the PE teacher who was on duty and we subsequently had to go to his office after school. No excuses were accepted, just the instruction to change into PE shorts with nothing underneath. 3 full force whacks each with the plimsoll on an already sore backside. A bad day all round. Not quite the same thing, but often at my school if we got into trouble in class, then sometimes we would receive an additional slippering from our form teacher or tutor for letting the class down. This could be irrespective of whether we got CP, detention, or lines. It wasn't a full-on whacking, just a single hit during registration the following day. I don't think I ever heard of any boy being caned twice on the same day. Although some boys feared another punishment from their parents at home that evening. I went to grammar school 1958 to 1965. I did a third year 6th as I couldn't get the college I wanted the previous year. Around that time there were plenty of parents who gave spankings at home. These varied a lot from family to family and of course many parents never used spanking at all. We had to take a note home if we were caned in school. It had to be signed and returned next day. One thing I have learned from another conversation on this site is that in particular in England, local authorities had guidelines regarding the use of the cane when it was still allowed. They typically didn't allow the same student to be caned more than once the same day, or sometime the same week. I expect other countries might have had similar rules. This might be why you wouldn't have heard of it occurring, although this wouldn't apply to independent schools, or the less formalized types of punishment, such as the slipper. Like you, I have heard of people saying that they were chastised by their parents if they got into trouble at school, resulting in them being punished twice in the same day. It occurs to me that there is a difference in culture from when I was at school. When I was at school, I wouldn't tell my parents whenever I had been in trouble at school. In fact, many students would say they preferred corporal punishment because it avoided parents from knowing, as opposed to a detention which they probably would know about. I know that particularly more recently, and in other places, the school informs the parents whenever they use corporal punishment, probably because it is a legal obligation in some areas. I'm sure there were many rules restrictions preventing more than one caning in the same day or perhaps even the same week. I was at senior school in the late 1950s into the mid-1960s. I was caned and slippered there. I wasn't a particularly bad lad, but I did a few visits to the headmaster's office. It was usually 2 or 3 strokes of the cane across the bottom bending over the end of his desk. It was given in private unless there were joint culprits when they caned in front of each other. A few of the older teachers gave the cane in class and others gave the slipper or some sort of ruler. I remember the metalwork teacher giving a boy 3 hard strokes with the cane for a silly prance with the hot forge. As I said in a previous post, many of us back then were spanked at home.